All right, this topic is going to be about gas available for use. So we already talked about our gas in stowage. Now, not all of that gas that we have in stowage is going to be available for us to use. For example, the floodable volume of a Mark III flask that we talked about in our last example is 0.935 standard cubic feet. And when it's totally empty, if you were to take the top of that off and just set it on surface, you would still have 0.935 standard cubic feet of air in there because you're at 1 ATA. All right, so our standard cubic feet of air, we can't use all of that for diving, so here's how we're going to figure out how much of that standard cubic feet of air in stowage that we can actually use for our dives. All right, so the equation goes something like this. So you take your PSIG that's in your flask, and so we'll say that pressure F, and then we're going to subtract from that another pressure, all right? And that pressure that we're subtracting for it is our minimum flask pressure, all right? Minimum flask. And that's going to be 200 PSIG for air and 100 PSIG for O2. That's in your formula book, so make sure you reference that. And then we're going to add our MMP to it. And then once we get that, we're going to take that entire thing and we're going to divide it all by 14.7. Once we have that number, we're going to multiply that times the floodable volume of our flask multiplied by the number of flasks that we have. And that's going to give us our standard cubic feet that's available for use, okay? So let's start off with an example. Let's say that our pressure on we'll use the same example that we're using a Mark III lightweight diving system, and we have 3 flasks on it. So, and we're going to be diving air, and we will say that we're planning our dive to go to, I don't know, we'll say 50 feet, and that'll just help us figure out our minimum manifold pressure in a second. So we take our PSIG in the flask, so we said it's at 3,000. We subtract our minimum, which is going to be 200, and then we add our MMP. I'm just going to write MMP here for a second. And then we divide that by 14.7 multiplied by the floodable volume, which you look up in your formula book. It's 0.935 times 3 will give us our answer. Now we just got to figure out what our MMP is. Now we talked about this earlier, so I'm not going to really spend too much time on this, but say we're diving to a depth of 50 feet. We're going to say 50 feet multiplied by 0.445 plus 90 equals our MMP. So I'm going to press that in my calculator over here. 50 times 0.445 plus 90 equals 112.25. So we're actually going to round that one up to 113 will be our MMP. So now that we found our MMP, we're going to take that and we're going to put it into this equation right up here. So I'm going to erase that, and I'm going to write 113. Now, this is quite a bit of math to do, so I'm just going to punch it into my calculator, and then we'll get our final answer over here. It's going to be in standard cubic feet, and that's going to be what's available to us to use. So 3,000 minus 200 plus 113. And then we're going to divide that by 14.7. And then we will multiply that by 0.935. That will be then multiplied by 3. And that will give us our final answer of 512.7, so 512.7, that's what's available. We're going to round down because we don't have 513 available, we only have 512. So 512 is available to us to use. Now, keep in mind that our earlier calculation for gas in stowage was equal to 575. So out of this 575, we have this much that is available to us.